if you are feeling ashamed as if, man, nobody can know about this because they may think that I'm crazy, or they may think that I would actually do the things that are coming into my head, you're not alone in that. What is up, my friend? Hope you're doing amazing. So we're going to talk about intrusive thoughts. I want to tell you right away, I have had a very, 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 very rough time with intrusive thoughts in times past, and they would come out of nowhere, and that's why they're called intrusive thoughts. And they're very uncomfortable, and if you don't have an objective game plan preset to deal with them, once they come, because they feel so real and scary, at least for me, it really, really threw me off track. Let's go ahead and just define what is an intrusive thought. I got this from a website, the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. Unwanted intrusive thoughts are stuck thoughts that cause great distress. They seem to come from out of nowhere, arrive with a whoosh, and cause a great deal of anxiety. The content of unwanted intrusive thoughts often focuses on sexual or violent or socially unacceptable images. People who experience unwanted intrusive thoughts are afraid that they might commit the acts they picture in their mind. And I'm going to give you a few examples of some stuff that's actually very uncomfortable for me to talk about from times past, some intrusive thoughts, but I'm working on being more vulnerable, and I want you to know that you're not alone. And just because you have a bad thought does not make you a bad person. Good people can have bad thoughts. Some unwanted intrusive thoughts consist of repetitive doubts about relationships, decisions, small and large, safety, religion, death, or worries about questions that cannot be answered with certainty. Some are just weird thoughts that make no apparent sense. Unwanted intrusive thoughts can be very explicit, and many people are ashamed and worried about them, and therefore keep them a secret. So that's something that you need to know right away, is if you are feeling ashamed as if, man, nobody can know about this because they may think that I'm crazy, or they may think that I would actually do the things that are coming into my head, you're not alone in that. And that is exactly how I felt whenever I started to have these intrusive thoughts. It's like, my gosh, if anybody ever found out about this, like what if they thought that I was actually going to carry out these crazy, sinister thoughts that were coming into my head. So this is a stat that I also got from the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. They said one estimate is that more than 6 million people in the United States are troubled by intrusive thoughts. So just know that you're not alone in this. I'm gonna go and give you a few intrusive thoughts that I struggled with. And this is very embarrassing. It's something that I'm not proud of, but it just is what it is. So one of them is kind of not really like, it's serious in the sense of what would happen if I were to actually act on the thought, but it's not, the first was not that big of a deal per se, but I was working at this job. There was like 800 people there, very, very large company. And I was really good friends with the top boss of the entire company. Everybody else would get very intimidated around this dude. I just try to treat people all the same. He honestly didn't intimidate me at all. He was a very friendly person, but you know, people are like, I don't want to lose my job and say the wrong thing. I had this fear that I was going to dump hot coffee all over this top boss's head. And that was really, really scary. And it felt so real. It was like, whenever the thought came in, it was like, all of a sudden there was like a DVD with this movie of me dumping coffee all over his head that started to just play in my head. And I would try to talk with him, but it wouldn't go away. So eventually, before I learned how to handle it, I would just have to leave. And it was very embarrassing because, like, I'm sure he could sense that I was getting anxious. I have been driving before, and this is where it gets kind of very, very embarrassing, but I've been driving before, and all of a sudden I got like a glimpse of like Grand Theft Auto. I don't know if you guys have played that game, but you basically can just drive over people, you can do whatever, but I'll be like in a parking lot and there'll be this thought that comes into my head of like, what if you just drove over everybody in the parking lot? And like, obviously that is not something that I would ever do. Obviously, that thought just makes me feel so grotesque and so hurt and so violated at just the thought of it. Also, I have had suicidal thoughts. I'm not even gonna lie. Like again, just because you have bad thoughts doesn't make you a bad person. Especially in times past, whenever I've had suicidal thoughts come in, I didn't have a game plan for that, so I would just sit there and be like, "Oh my gosh, like, is this real? Like, am I actually wanting to do that?" Like, it becomes like this internal battle and this mental battle, especially when it comes to suicidal thoughts, that it can just be totally overwhelming. So, especially with suicidal thoughts, but any intrusive thoughts that make you feel very, very uncomfortable, make sure that you're working with a licensed mental health professional and tell somebody, just generally speaking, about what you're going through. And so let's get into the practical side of things. Where are we at on time? So the first thing, this is what I say if I have an intrusive thought, is I say out loud, "This is not me." Okay, that's kind of generally speaking. Let's say it's just something negative, generally speaking. This is not me, which identifies that just because I'm experiencing this thought doesn't automatically mean that it's coming from my character, that it's coming from who I am. The second thing that I'll do, if it's related to something that would violate my character, my integrity, I will also add on to that, "I would never do that." So I'll say, "That is not me. This thought is not me, and I would never do that." Now, the next thing that I do is I become aware of my physiological state. Now, I would say, at least for me, probably 8 out of 10 times I'm tensing my body whenever I have these intrusive thoughts, which may communicate that whenever we tense our body, we're in an anxious state. It may make us more likely to have these intrusive thoughts. So perhaps if we can shift out of an anxious state, it may mitigate or even eliminate how many intrusive thoughts that we're experiencing. There's no guarantees, but it always helps to be in a calm state for sure, if anything, to help you navigate intrusive thoughts once they come. It's hard enough dealing with the intrusive thoughts, but then if you're already in an anxious state, it makes it doubly difficult. So what I teach, and what has benefited me the most to get out of an anxious state, is to shift what's happening with our physiology, as well as shifting what happens with our focus. So what I'll do is I'll become aware of any body tension, and then I'll just release the tension. Now, there's a few ways that I do that. I just let my whole body become like a wet noodle. I just imagine like spaghetti and just bloop, bloop. The next thing that I may do is I may relax my pelvic floor muscles, which are your pee holding muscles. It's been my experience that it's very difficult to remain in an anxious state while having relaxed pelvic floor muscles. That's our core muscles. And what happens with me, at least, is whenever I relax my pelvic floor muscles, I feel like the rest of my body is like, okay, yeah, we'll relax too. That's just been what happens with me. And after that, the third thing that I do is I shift my focus. I don't give these thoughts any more mental real estate. So I will listen to music. If I'm driving, I'll turn on NF, who's one of my favorite hip hop artists, who I'm going to see this month, and I'm so freaking excited about it. He has a new album called The Search, and if you're not an NF fan, I highly encourage you to check it out. He talks a lot about mental health stuff, actually. He has a whole album called Mansion, which is just about different traumas that he's gone through, and it's just helped so many people, including myself, relate with that. And also, if you're looking for great workout music, NF is the man. So anyway, little shout out to NF there. Nonetheless, I focus on music, I'll focus on my to-do list, I'll read a book, just something that challenges and engages my mind. And I think because these thoughts feel so very real, our proclivity is to want to entertain them as if they were real. And thus, for me, it's important that I don't continue to pay attention to it, because the more that I obsess over that and zero in on it, the more that my brain, body, and nervous system are going to think that it's real. Whatever we focus on and also our physiology are the two main things that are communicating to our brain, body, and nervous system whether we're safe or under threat. So imagine if you were like at a football game and you're sitting up in the bleachers, all of a sudden there's like some sketchy dude that comes up, and they're like 30 feet away at first, and you kind of notice them, but then you're like, okay, they're over there. And then you focus back on the football game. But then all of a sudden they move about 15 feet closer, and then all of a sudden you're checking constantly what is happening with your focus. Then your muscles start tensing up to prepare you for fight, flight, freeze response. the combination of obsessively checking over and over again about that sketchy person and tensing your body are starting to send signals of danger to your brain, body, and nervous system that you're under danger, which will keep you in a state of survival. And even though this thought is just a thought, if we respond to that thought with a tense physiological state and an obsessed negative focus, danger signals will be sent, cortisol, adrenaline will start pumping into our bloodstream, and then we're going to enter an anxious state, which will mean that we're not properly equipped to deflect these intrusive thoughts. Imagine that these intrusive thoughts are like a stray cat in your yard. The stray cat comes up, looks kind of dirty, and looks like it might have rabies or something. Can cats have rabies? I don't know. But this stray cat has rabies. And you're like, okay, don't really want you in my yard, but you're not gonna run up and go, shoo, and start screaming at it. You're just going to talk to it and be like, okay, you can be in my yard, that's fine. Don't really want you there, but I'm actually gonna go back in the house. I'm gonna keep my body relaxed and I'm gonna watch TV. That's kind of an illustration of what needs to happen. At least that's what I do whenever I'm faced with intrusive thoughts. A few final tips: expect them to happen again. I would love to tell you that if we walk around in a calm state most of the time, that intrusive thoughts would never happen again. But the truth is, even though I walk around in a calm state most of the time, I still do have intrusive thoughts from time to time. I'm not gonna say it's rare. I'm also not gonna say it's often. It's kind of in between there perhaps. It really just depends on any given week or month. But if we expect them to happen again, then whenever they do happen, we're not going to be as thrown off and react. We want to always respond, because if we respond, it communicates that there's an actual strategy that we're using. But whenever we react, because we don't have an intentional strategy, because we didn't expect this to happen again, we're going to go into survival mode, because that's what we are wired for. So it's very important that, okay, we expect this may happen again. If it does, that's fine. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, this is not me. I would never do that. Relax our body, shift our focus. So that way, whenever it happens, we already have a pre-plan in place. Just like if you look on cruise ships, they have tons of lifeboats. They don't wait until the ship is sinking to have enough lifeboats. That really didn't work out for the Titanic, now did it? So we don't want to be like the Titanic. We want to have plenty of lifeboats, plenty of strategies, so that if these things do happen, we already are able to combat it. Please like this if it helped you. Comment, let me know any tips that you use to combat intrusive thoughts. Make sure to subscribe, join the Fearless family, and share this. Please actually send this to anybody that you know that struggles with intrusive thoughts, because we've got to get the word out about this, because a lot of people are too embarrassed to seek help for this, and just watching this video alone may give them a feeling of encouragement and give them some strategies to use. That is it, my friends. Hope this helped you. Oh, just realized my fancy smancy screensaver. I was trying to be cool and have that in the background, but yep. All right, guys, you're amazing, and I will see you in the next video. We'll see you. Bye.